Honorable Matafa. Honorable Tambo.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to all of the presenters today. I see Honorable Vilagazi has left us. We are the ones in uniform that he was referring to. We are very passionate about the cost of data, but particularly the phenomenon of expiry of data and airtime. And before this sitting, we've done some outreach to the public for them to submit to us outside of the question of data expiry and airtime expiry and data costs. What particular challenges do they face with mobile network operators? Because we don't speak for ourselves here. I mean, as members of parliament, I can give you a basic example. We operate with cell phones provided by parliament, so we don't necessarily buy data with the frequency that the ordinary South African will. So those challenges are something we must also reach out to ordinary society to advise us as to what would they want. And I'd like to thank all of those who reached out to us. And I think most members of the committee will speak to the issues that confront broader society. So as the EFF, we have an understanding of connectivity and data access to airtime as something that is a basic human right. So access to information for us, we conceptualize it as something that's a basic human right. You can't survive in South African society without having access to data or connectivity. You can't apply for a job. You can't complain about service delivery. You can't request interventions in terms of ambulance or police. You can't do your schoolwork. You can't apply for school. So it's at the center of everyday living. It's as critical as food. And that is our appreciation of it. So when we raise the concern about data expiring, we're raising it not ignorant to the fact that there might be a financially logical explanation. But from the background that we come from, and you'll appreciate it as well, even though we might be on different aisles ideologically, we know that capital is an explanation for the undermining of human rights in various spheres of society. By capital, I mean private sector. I'll give you an example. A private hospital can justify denying a pregnant woman who's about to give labor assistance because she doesn't have a medical aid. They can justify not assisting someone who has been stabbed or shot because they don't have a medical aid to provide so that they can be given that service. A bank can repossess your house or your car. You might have been paying it for 10 years. You miss a month's installment, they'll take it back. Funeral cover, you can be paying it for 10, 15 years. You miss 1 month and you die. You've lost your coverage. So there is always a financial logic to justify violation of human rights or undermining of dignity. So I don't doubt that there's a logical financial explanation for the expiry mandates of data and airtime. But I think let's give you an opportunity to give us that logical explanation, which may be logical to you, but continues to undermine access to information for ordinary South Africans and their ability to live in this country. So I want us to appreciate it at that level, that your logic may be sound financially, but it undermines possibly human rights and human dignity as it comes to access to information. So let's get a clear-cut and concise explanation from all mobile network operators as to why do you practice the expiry mandate of data and airtime? What does it seek to achieve? And what impact do you think it has on ordinary South Africans? Why do you not practice? Because the chair said we must also avail solutions in this regard. Longer rollover periods that do not require the user to be the one who applies for the rollover of the data, but automatically they roll over if you say for 3 to 6 months, because it becomes extremely exploitative in the manner that it exists in now. That a person buys data that lasts them 24 hours, 7 hours, a week or a month, because they feel like this is the product that they have purchased. We made a very layman example about perishable goods when we started this debate, so I'm interested in that. The second issue I'd like to raise is the characterization I think we should now begin to have of mobile network operators as almost sellers of financial products. And I'll tell you why. because some of you, and I'm also interested to hear perhaps across the board, you sell funeral cover, you sell life cover. And I'm interested as to how does that impact on your profit margins? How does that exist alongside your provision of services of mobile connectivity or internet connectivity? Because mobile network operators are almost adopting a parallel model of operating like banks or insurers in this evolving telecommunication space. So I'm curious as to all of you, Vodacom, Cell C, MTN, Rain, offer these financial products. How do they contribute to your profit margins? And what is your motivation to basically enter into that terrain as well? I mean, even the question, I'm interested on the profitability of products such as the caller tune phenomenon. Like, how do you do your scaling or modeling of financial profit there as well? Do artists get dividends from you utilizing that product? How much are those dividends? Do they feel represented in that space? But also the airtime advance phenomenon. I mean, that is I would characterize it as a revolving loan, like a consistently available revolving loan system being provided by mobile network operators. Because if you give me a chance to take 20 Rand airtime, and then when you recover that airtime, you recover it with a profit, that is banking, but operating under a mobile network operator system. So I'm curious, how do you view yourselves as you enter the market of providing financial products? Like, do you accept that you're conducting functions that can be characterized as banking, especially when it comes to airtime advances? And then when it comes to the caller tune phenomenon, can you accept that you are venturing into the creative space? Are creatives benefiting from phenomenon such as utilizing music, and then people subscribe to that on a month-to-month basis when they call people? I'm interested in that. I think the third and last part, Chair, I can feel your look. Oh, I'm still fine. Okay. The third part, there's a culture that is causing a lot of suspicion of headhunting senior leaders of the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa by mobile network operators. Like, you hire them, you'll hire a CEO, you'll hire a former board member of ICASA. Now ICASA is the regulatory authority of all of you. And I think it is fair to accept that it is suspicious that those who regulate you, whenever their time or term of tenure within ICASA comes to an end, immediately migrate to work for the mobile network operators that they were regulators of previously. And it casts doubt and suspicion, especially as it relates to issues such as data costs, which have been something of debate in South Africa for more than 10 years, when it comes to issues of expiry of data as well. I mean, there's been a sanctioning of commissions on commissions after commission by ICASA on why data expires, how can we introduce new rollover methods. But they always end up in thin air. They always end up convinced by the mobile network operators that it would be more costly to abandon expiry mandates rather than sustain them. And then the very same people who are convinced by the mobile network operators end up in senior positions within the very same mobile network operators they were supposed to regulate. After that, I'm interested, is it a matter of you seeking expertise? Is it nefarious? I would hope it's not. But why is there seemingly an effort to recruit former regulators by mobile network operators? I mean, for example, the MTN group appointed Willington Gweb as the chief of staff, who served as the CEO of ICASA for 5 years. Why? What expertise does the regulator bring to mobile network operators? Vodacom did the same thing with a board member, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, a guy called Andrew Matsik worked for ICASA Council and then ended up at Vodacom. So I'm not saying you are engaged in time. And back at ICASA. Yeah, I'm not saying you're engaged in some form of insider trading or something, but it's a curious phenomenon that I'm interested in understanding. Is there some certain expertise a former regulator brings to a mobile network operator that is motivating you to pursue them? Or should we be concerned that there are incentives of employment post-regulating for regulators, which will undermine the consumer rights of South Africans as well. I think I might, lastly, can't end without talking about Starlink. Telkom was very emphatic on its critique or concern around the policy directive of the minister around the regulatory framework in South Africa, and cautioned against exceptions being made for certain individuals or certain entities. And I think ACT as well, there's a concern about new entrants being prioritized, whereas there's existing people in the space. I'm interested in Vodacom and MTN, Rain and Cell's perspective as well. What do you think foreign satellite network operators' impact is going to be on the local telecommunications space in terms of jobs, in terms of infrastructure development? I mean, surely there'll be an impact if we allow an entity such as Starlink to operate in South Africa on the local telecommunications sector. What would that impact be? Would it be favorable to local telecommunication providers? Or is it something that we should view with caution? But also on the national security aspect, which is a concern we hold, that Starlink is owned by someone who has made certain disinformation about our country. What is your view about such entrance into a market that you've been operating in, and where you claim to have been practicing quite high levels of patriotism through your social outreach and investments? What is Starlink's role going to be when it enters? And do any of you have any particular relationships with Starlink, SpaceX, or Elon Musk? Has there been any engagements around their entrance into South Africa? I won't mention anyone's name that we've
run out of time now.
lingering. But yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Tambo. Honorable Alicia.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I think if we really have the same objective with the MNOs, we're not going to lie to each other. Or we're not going to deliberately mislead each other. You know, as they were giving these presentations, the CEO of Vodacom says 5 gigabytes is 99 Rand. So I took my phone and I tried to check what you're saying. And I realized, the first thing I realized in the exercise I was doing is the inconsistencies as far as the pricing is concerned. Like when you check on your phone, you're going to buy with your airtime. The prices are different if you're buying through a bank. And maybe you can explain that to us. But also, CEO, there is a 5 gigabytes of for 99 Rand, but that is for the data offers, and that is for the modems when I had to check, right? Maybe you can clarify that, because then now you're giving us an impression that there is a 5 gigabytes that people can get for that amount. You've made a reduction, but these are according to the packages and the modems, which is not something that, you know, the poor people are enjoying. They're not enjoying modems and the data packages. And all of you are bragging about coverage, you know, the reach and the coverage that you have achieved. But you're omitting that in the rural areas, especially, you know, with the MTN, people in the rural areas are still climbing mountains to get network, and they're still climbing on trees because they are relying on 2G. And that is something that I need us to talk about. And if the CEO of MTN is saying he's very connected to the people and feels what the people are going through, that is the reality of what people are going through. They're climbing on trees just to make a call. And rightfully so, Chairperson, they are correct to say they blame, you know, the networks because they can't connect when there is a crisis. They have to climb trees and mountains and try to find network that they have paid for. That is expensive. They can't even afford it, but they get it and they still have to struggle. And I want us to take that, and maybe the CEOs can clarify it to us. And no matter how you've reduced the data, if there is a South African who's earning 1.5, data is still expensive for that person. And even if you've got a domestic worker and the security guards, let's say, are earning 3.5 a month, the data prices that you have are still very expensive for those people. They still spend more than 1% or 1% of their salary on data. CEO, I see, and this happens a lot, I see when people come and present and make all these fancy presentations to us, they tell us about the social responsibility work that they're doing. Yes, you donate laptops to these schools, but you omit that they don't have solar panels and the routers. And that means they're rendering whatever it is that you bring to them useless because they can't use them. They can't connect. So you bring in computers and laptops to these people or these students, these learners, but they can't use them. And also maybe the CEO of Vodacom can clarify this. There are tokens that you are giving to schools, but after that token has expired, teachers and learners still have to buy airtime. And maybe you can clarify that, because then it excludes the poor learners that we are talking about. And the CEO of MTN had that 99 Rand smart cell phone that he was presenting it to us, but he omits the fact that there needs to be a 70 Rand airtime lock-in in that package, and people are actually getting blacklisted because this is a contract that they can't. When they miss a payment, they get blacklisted because that is a contract that they can't afford. So these are the details that we need when you come here and tell us about these things. You can't omit such information that data is still very unaffordable for an ordinary South African. So maybe they can tell us, what you can tell us is that when are you reducing data and make it affordable for South African people, and stop focusing on making profit. And maybe they can tell us, Che, if they're making profits on this expired data, why are you so obsessed with expiration of data that a person has paid for? Maybe you can clarify that to us and tell us if maybe you are making profit. Another one, Chair, is maybe they can tell us, why haven't you implemented the free data for grant recipients and the students and unemployed youth? What is hindering you from doing that? Because you know that, like Komisa had said here next to me, that this is not luxury. It's something that our people need. It's no longer luxury. And I think we learned that from COVID-19, that having data has become a necessity. It's a basic need. Maybe another one, Che, Vodacom, we have it on good authority that you are selling customers' information to third parties, and this is something that is talked about. Do you make profit? How much are you getting from selling our information? Maybe you can tell us, why shouldn't we charge you for theft? Because that is not something that you should be doing. And I think, Chair, when you were saying maybe we should also come up with solutions, the chairperson of association did mention that the licenses are expiring soon. Maybe they can tell us, why should their licenses be renewed if they are not they are not agreeing to these data to making free data provisions? Why should you your licenses be renewed if you're not committing to the free data and these things of the expiration of data? I think that's it from me, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Alicia. Honorable Gaga.
Thanks, Honorable Chair, honorable members, all officials in this platform. Good afternoon. Firstly, Chair, in my own language, just to extend a message of condolence to the people of the Eastern Cape. Silele izolo ingu-49, today sivuka ingu-78. And i-lifesavers sabakhupha sabakhala kula magobe. The number is increasing. Masinxenxeze kubo. Sisho sithi kuba behlala ku-rural areas. It's an experience. So bephinde basithele. It's a reflection of staying in a rural area. That belt of KZN, Eastern Cape, which is mostly affected on a yearly basis, we must take responsibility, all of us, as people who are empowered to be in these offices. Chair, mine is to deal with the question of jobs vis-a-vis automation and higher unemployment rate in the country. While you are celebrating for the job creation, how do you reconcile the widespread implementation of automation, such as AI, in customer? Yes. In customer service that displaces low-skilled workers in a nation grappling with unemployment. How do you balance the two? That we continue with this development, automation, but on the other side, there are workers who have got responsibilities. How do you then balance the two? The next question, your licenses impose essential social responsibilities to you. What consequences your licenses impose essential social responsibilities, such as ensuring universal access, audit have revealed deficiencies. What consequences should be enforced for failing to comply? What do you do in the event that there's non-compliance? In your own words, do you consider yourselves to be compliant with your social obligations? And do you believe that you are doing enough to change the current social discourse of South Africa? Are you convinced that the role you are playing in different entities is actually making an impact to an ordinary person in the street? In what ways have you actively facilitated the transition from analog to digital to ensure that spectrum is available for the benefit of the public rather than for the profit-driven motives? There's this discussion and the process that seems to be dragging the transition from analog to digital. Bear with me, Chair. Now, The next question, the Competition Commission has highlighted concerning practices that undermine fair competition within the sector. What measures are in place to ensure fair competition and prevent collusion in spectrum bidding on pricing? And my question seems to be cutting across all entities that are here. The last one, Chair, are profits from urban high-income users utilized to support the expansion into rural areas? Or is the rollout of these regions merely an afterthought of goodwill? In your maps, as you were presenting, you could easily identify a concentration of service delivery to metros and some urban areas. But in rural provinces, you could easily see that there's no focus and concentration in terms of your work. And surely a situation like what we are beginning to see in some provinces cannot be avoided. Because for the past 30 years, we have been focusing to these urban metro areas at the expense of the majority of rural people. And now then you begin now to change the shift and focus to prioritize rural areas so that they are at the same level. Because those are the areas that were victimized or a legacy of apartheid. How do we then begin to change your mindset in ensuring that these people, these citizens, South African citizens, also are on par with their counterparts in these particular areas? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Khaga. Honorable Potlani.
Chair, ke a leboga. I think, Chair, this is the one meeting that did not happen for Honorable Sithole. He was looking forward to this sort of engagement because he would tell us, I was emakaya, and you literally have to go on a mountaintop to just get a network. So yeah, may his soul continue to rest in peace. Chair, I think to thank you for this meeting and to say we must find ways to formalize future engagements with this sector of communications, and even if it's maybe twice a year, because these are the people that I think fall through the cracks, and this has really been informative. So we do not treat you as the other, but as colleagues have spoken as to how important you are in the building of this society. Perhaps a blanket question to all the organizations represented. Why do you make it so difficult for customers to exit from their contracts? You end up with people being blacklisted and you say, give me a month's notice that you want to leave. And even if it is your hardware failures that make people want to leave, there does not seem to be a respect for people taking your contracts and the choice and the liberty to then say, I want to exit. Why do you make it that difficult? And Honorable Tambo has spoken to the issue of the data cost. What is the science behind it? Is it really purely on an economic, a business sense that you take people and they invest in buying data, and at the end of it, you say, oopsie, it has expired? Is there a science to it, or is it just purely for your financial gains? And how do you think that contributes to nation building? How do you think that contributes to redressing the economic situations of South Africa? As organizations here, what is the status of really turning South Africa into an industrial zone, where we talk about the cost of devices being high, but is it not going to help us to start talking about manufacturing locally? I remember there was a story about a local company, but I can't remember, but I don't think it is happening at the scale that it should be, considering where we are as a country. Or unless you are able to provide further information on that, I will really appreciate that. I'm happy that the Telkom says we are all surprised that we have electricity. And this is exactly where we are. We are really surprised that we do have electricity. With the appreciation of how load shedding has hindered your progress, how are you future-proofing yourself from that? Is there a lot of investment in solar energy? Is the solar energy enough for you to continue your operations? Because we have really spoken about the importance of having access to cell phone communications as society. Act also spoke about the use of Yusuf. I'm not going to be as harsh as Honorable Subrathi on my opinion on what you said, but mine would be to say, in your view, what would be the best use, the best benefit for that fund? Because to hear that we are still talking about slowness of universal access, but you have an organization that is trusted with the same sitting on top of billions, it's an anomaly. So how do we balance that? And this is in the spirit of Chair saying there must be also solutions. And there's also a sense that there's innovation happening within the companies. And I really also appreciated how you spoke about how you remain committed to the social obligations. But I will come back to that issue. I want to raise the issue of Ndate John Kaba. Please do remind me, Chair. And I also noted the issue of fair regulation. I get that. Police have spoken to that. And maybe again to Act, is this now you completely oppositional to the issue of satellite? And I will not go further because I think again Honorable Tambo spoke to that. What I would like to really understand is the conversation about, to MTN, is the conversation about how you justify the cost to communicate being higher in South Africa as opposed to a country like Nigeria, for example. And when you juxtapose that with Telkom, for example, who are able to say in 2018, you could buy 1 gig of data for 149, and they were able to lower it in 2024 to 99 rand or something. I don't know if I've got my numbers correctly, but you know what I mean. And to say, if Telkom is able to do that, why are we not at a point? And the explanation that you were giving about the issue of dotting, to say because of the spatialness of South Africa, it then becomes very difficult for you to really invest in infrastructure that makes accessibility. That's how I understood you. That makes accessibility possible. But where do you find the balance? Why can one company do that and the other not be able to do that at all? Some and like my colleague is saying, where is the truth between all of that? And as you also made a point about how OTTs are piggybacking on your infrastructure, and yes, we will blame the network provider to say, oh, I cannot watch my favorite OTT, whatever, because the network is bad. What engagements are you having with the OTTs, if at all? Is there an interest for them to meet you halfway, especially if you talk about infrastructure that will then improve the quality of service for ourselves as end users? Chair, I think the issue of RICA remains a thorn in our fleshes. I've had, and I can quote 3 incidents where one caller was trying to extort money from me, saying there was death threats against me. The other one, 2 weeks back, I got 3 missed calls after 9 p.m. And in the morning I called and they say, oh, this is a prison. Do you know anybody in prison? I said, I do not. No, you must know somebody in prison because somebody was calling you from prison last night. But when you check those calls, it's registered to somebody. And the most unfortunate one was a video call, and I thought, why would anybody that I do not know be video calling me? On the other hand, was somebody playing with themselves. And this is you innocently thinking, why would you video call me? And when you go and check that number, it's registered to some Solofelo Potlani, and the picture is not even that of Solofelo Potlani. I do beg your pardon, for you to make sense of that. So how much needs to be done for us to really take the issue of cell phone numbers regulations seriously, especially considering that we now have our children that are now having their own devices. And if something like that could happen to me, and an adult as I am, what more if it's going to be happening to our children? We have seen a move from the issue of voice calls to data calls. And again, what is your engagements with organizations such as Meta the Googles and them. Because at the end of the day, you are a big player in the provision of the services that they provide. How do you then engage with them? But the question here is, how do you ready yourself to then be able to not be left out of the equation with the growth of data calls as opposed to voice calls? And I also wanted to make the point about Telkom. As painful as it was, the transition from Telkom to where it is today, if there was no growing pains for Telkom, if there was no push for Telkom to be something else, we would be sitting with a situation that we are seeing now with the South African Post Office, I do beg your pardon. But Telkom had that foresight to say, you move with the times. Now they talk about themselves as having data centers. A few years back, that would not even have been a thing, especially, at least not on the scale that they are having here. So big ups to Telkom. There's one mathematics that is really not adding up for me. Every operator says, MTN says, I have 99% of access representation. Cell C says, I have 96%. Telkom says, I have 99%. How many pieces of cake are there? So that this maths heads up. And I think Honorable Vilakazi tried to answer it to say, is the total not 100%? How could you all be sitting on over 99%? So please educate me. And this is exposing my ignorance. And Chair, while I do have time, there was a gentleman who reached out to me. He said his name was Mr. John Kaba. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. That's John. He says he is the inventor of the airtime advance. And he is again one of those people who is in court with Vodacom. And he says he's also the inventor of subscriber and device identification. I don't know how far that case went, but I think he reached out to me about a month or two ago. So I remembered when I saw Vodacom to say that is the issue. But that's not where I want to take it. I know Honorable Vilakazi spoke about the Please Call Me saga, which again, I think stifles innovation, stifles employees being able to say, this is an organization that I value. I want to also contribute to innovation. But he says, and he was saying I was misled in the previous meeting when I spoke about the recycling of devices, because we talk about bringing in devices, but the conversation never gets to say, how do we then dispose of devices? And he says there's ways for us to deal with e-waste. That could lead to job creation, that could lead to all other offshoots. What is your view as organizations that literally your services, your businesses hinges on getting handsets in the hands of people on the e-dumping? Yeah, I think also the issue of...
Lastly.
Oh, no, Chair. Remember last time I saved you time? Subanjalo. The problem is that I'm trying not to put on my glasses. Now I'm looking at my paper like that. And I was saying to Vila, as I'm writing, but halfway I will not be able to see my handwriting. But I think we have spoken a lot about social obligations. But and I appreciate all of you saying this is something that you do from the goodness of your heart. It did not need to be something that is regulated, that is required of yourselves. But there's also a feeling that you are not happy with how social obligations happen. In your world, what would be the perfect way for you to be able to say, this is what we give back, so that we also understand as we engage with yourselves, that it's not a matter of painting 3 crashes and building 2 schools. And by when you come back, those investments, as it were, have been vandalized, and then it's a waste of money. In your world, what would be the perfect way for you to say, this is how we give back?
Thank you very much, Honorable Bodlani. Honorable Makubele.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Perhaps let me also start by joining my colleagues in expressing our sincere condolences to the families in Eastern Cape, and our thoughts and our prayers are with them, to yourself, Chairperson, and your family. We pray for your strength and grace in this time, and we continue to honor the memory and the contribution of Honorable Stole. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair, and thank you for the presentations. Today, of course, we came to assess the compliance of USOs and the alignment of the operators with the ECA and all the acts that govern our telecommunications industry. And as members of this portfolio committee and myself and my colleague coming from MK Party, we are really guided by the values and the principles of total and complete freedom politically, economically, socially, spatially, culturally, and in knowledge and ideology. And it's important that we emphasize, as I'm going to start my presentation, that we stand by equitable access to resources and services, especially for the marginalized community, because that's where our constituencies are. And we don't view the USOs, as my colleague said, as a obligatory forced issue on operators. We really think this should move beyond that obligation of technical compliance. It should move towards a moral obligation, where all of us in our patriotic hearts, if we're truly South Africans, we should search ourselves deeply and see whether in our respective spaces are we impacting the lives of our people, especially in underserviced areas, with the stewardship that you have been given, whether it's through Vodacom, through MTN, through Rain, through any other, through Telkom. If you are to be really honest with yourself, have you impacted the lives of those that are less vulnerable, that really need the services that you offer? Beyond this burden of compliance, it's good we see the presentation of the operators, and all of them, they seem to want to align to the broader goals of the national development plans. The radical economic transformation is a question mark. But from where we are sitting, we've got a disconnect with the presentation and with our lived and experienced reality on the ground. And that's a fact. You see, every time you watch CNN, for instance, and you see Nigerian banks advertising on CNN, South Africans are not there. You see telecommunications from Africa advertising on CNN. You look around, perhaps now and then you can see MTN popping up, but largely South Africans are not there. And then you take somebody like Dangote as an example, maybe to a certain extent like our MTN, who was powered by the policies and the laws of their own country. The governments of Nigeria throughout the years have ensured that somebody like Dangote can rise from the ashes, become a game changer in the global markets, compete with the best that there is internationally, and become a household name that can be celebrated, and the people of Nigeria can resonate with him, associate with him, because he looks like them, he sounds like them, yet he sits in the echelons of market success, as it were. And you look at that individual and the type of CSI and corporate social responsibilities that he undertakes. In his reported books, over $4 billion that has been spent in various programs. This is not forced by government or by laws or by regulations upon him as an individual. Healthcare, infrastructure, telecommunications, is building schools, roads, water, and sanitation. And that's because he understands that the country where he resides has so generously offered him opportunities and laws that enabled him to rise, protections that enabled him to compete and be able to compete at that global level. And he has reciprocated that generosity of his country, by plowing back in a manner that is commendable by any standard. Now, we live in a country that has enabled CEOs of operators like yourself sitting here. I looked at the MTN CEO, group CEO, who earns 80 million rands per annum. He can literally pay our MKP caucus, all 58 of us per annum, including our staff. And if you use the multiplier effect, we've got maybe about 10, 15 staff with us. Let's say we are 65 times 10. You can feed in a year 650 people that all 58 of us we contribute to annually. That's significant. And then this country of ours has made it possible that some of you sitting here, even the MTN CEO in South Africa, the amount of money that is reported here, significant. I look at the CEO of Vodacom, another 70 million rand per annum, very significant. Where do you derive this money? It's at the back of those marginalized people, those that queue for grants every month, some of them 350 SRDs. The question that we are trying to answer today is, how do we do justice to this poor, to this vulnerable? We're not asking for much that it is outside of your operations of what you do. You have become loan sharks to the poor. Instead of cutting data costs, you are now advancing it, loaning them. Because they have to communicate. There's no other way. There is no other system that they can use to stay in touch, connect with hospitals, connect with loved ones. They must use these networks. This country has so generously provided you spectrum, infrastructure, and any other resources that you need, and a market that most of you have bounced from, MTN, Vodacom, and now you are international companies to be spoken of. But it all started here. 1994, 1993, some of you started to operate. We only have 24,000 schools in South Africa. 24,000 schools. And all of you are coming here to tick boxes. You are straining hair. You are trying to fit this wool through a thin needle, trying to tell us how you have not been able to achieve collectively just to connect 24,000 schools. MTN, you reported profits of over 200 billion last year. Vodacom, I'm trying to get to Vodacom. Also staggering profits. I think it was almost 40 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Rain, about 2.5 billion. Telkom, your profits rose by almost 33%. You're sitting at some billions. You see, I hate to use this thing. I like to print my stuff so it doesn't jump around. But all of you combined, I don't know what is the percentage of your revenue to this work of universal service obligation that we've been straining for the past 30 years to accomplish. And we have to meet like this to almost force you to tell us, please, can we cut data costs, especially for the vulnerables? Please. We have no fee schools that cannot even afford the data. Most of you here, you just went to the schools and dumped modems. Not sustainable. You're not paying for their month-to-month connectivity. You have not even been back to see whether it's meaningful, universal access that you have provided, or it's just a dump of a modem so that we can come here and report, yes, we have connected 2,000 schools, we have 1,000 more to go. It cannot be acceptable, Chair.
Thank you.
It cannot be
Lastly,
acceptable. I'm going,
My final
lastly,
point.
my final point is that, Chairperson, these 10 minutes are not working. Chair, how long, this is the quick key question, how long do these operators sitting here, how long do they think the people in the townships, in the rural areas have to wait for this promised universal services obligations to be fulfilled, for data to be cut down? How long will they have to pay for the price of corporate greed? Because you can't stop paying yourselves, you can't stop increasing your bonuses that you make at the back of these communities. But without prioritizing these gooses that are laying your golden eggs, how long can we sustain this before there's a revolt in our communities and our constituencies? Because there is no moral obligation and no gratitude for what this country has offered these operators. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Makwela. Honorable Shongwe.
Thank you, Chair. Sanbonan Foot. Chair, data la
Sorry,
bazala.
Honorable, last time ula ukhulume ngama necklace ne nama petrol. Ngiyakhumbuza. No necklace, no petrol today. Please. Thank you, Honorable Shonga. You may proceed.
See, Chair. See.
I got a formal complaint about necklace and petrol. You may proceed, Honorable Shonga.
Fiscal framework where we
No, sir. Or necklace data, Chair. Oh, okay. No, Chair. Angixolisele kakhulu kodwa ngiyayixolisela. But Chair, I had a lot of questions engizibhalela phansi. Now, CEO of MTN made me change all these questions and stick to what is important, because he spoke kamnandi as umuntu okhulele ekhaya. When he says he's one of those people who come from emakhaya, and he spoke of isimilo sakhe nokuyigqaja kwakhe ngekhaya lakhe. So, Chair, at one stage, Vodacom was visible in my township through choirs, Zamazayoni, clap and tap, sport and everything. MTN followed suit at certain time. Chelsea tried. In the past 10 years, I don't know Gutibapi. I feel all these companies are now knowing Uguti Sebago free way of just making money, profit all the way. Which begs the question from me, Uguti, Ama MNOs, what are you to the government? Are you partners? Or do you view government as a CSI project where you can just paint walls, boreholes, leave them there, give them t-shirts, leave them there, make money? Because all your profits are in billions. All your profits are in billions, and you are seriously making money now. You may hide up behind it. You can hear my salaries when serious salaries. Embarrassing, in fact, you guys are earning so much from our people and bayekelile kanje. Chair, I want to ask Vodacom, what's the difference between Vodacom, no Minister Wetu Soli, the communication, no Elon Musk? Do they share something in South Africa now? Because Minister Zami look vulela Elon Musk through CCPE. Vodacom has been sitting no muntu omnyama, Chair. Isikhathi eside ayekhotha phinda abuye abafuni ukumkhokhela imali yakhe yento ayicreate yena. Vodacom, why are you doing this to a black person? You see, Chair, umkhonto wesizwe comes with into ethi we must do away with these Roman laws. Specifically, it's for this reason that these Roman Dutch laws are destroying our people. You can't be going to court and what is this word? appeal. If this country can go back to Amakos, this nonsense wouldn't be happening. That guy tried on this thing yakhe le case yakhe le. Ube neskin esihle muhle umfana omncane. Right now he's getting old. Are you waiting for him to die before you say something or do something? Che, we are failing thina as a government, failing in South Africa ngala ama MNOs. You chair sitting there have been trying to get these MNOs to come here. Since I started this parliament, you've been trying to get them to come here. These people are ruling us. So I don't understand. I want to know. That's my question. Ningobani nina? Who are you between nina and the government? Are you partners or nisbona as CSI projects? So within the ama giveaways is that is very, very wrong. Number two, what I want to know, Chair, is that there are access to the suppliers of these apps, such as Netflix, X, and the rest. If I don't have a phone and have a SIM card that is Telkom, Cell C, MTN, and all the rest, I wouldn't have access to those apps if I'm not at home. What are you doing to help us, Sibuisi South Africa, when you ask Elon Musk law and Mbona Yonganandaba in South Africa? What have you done with that much access to porn? Anybody can just access it, as simple as that. What have you done? Because you are the door to this everything here. When I'm coming from townships or Emakaya, I don't see Wuti Netflix is coming from Netflix. I see Netflix coming from Cell C and MTN or whatever, because my phone is that network. So I need us to login and also remind you, Wuti, government South Africa must take charge. And you must follow suit in protecting our country. No good leave there to carelessly, so it's very, very bad in Denienza. We find ourselves, CEO, where at some stage my number was given to somebody borrowing money through my number. But when you go to a township, you can buy a SIM card from Spaza shop and get it recorded there. And recording is the most important thing. The most important, if we can check. But how can it be if it's the key of this cyber security, but you can get it to Abu, my friend, and easily record that card for R5? Why are you doing that to South African guys? Why are you MNOs no longer caring about South Africa? What is your return of investment, manje, as we speak? Asanbone malokshina, asanbone makai. Go to Emakaya where usisibhodlane ekhuluma ngendaba kababusithole. You go to most of those freeways, you'll find girls sitting on top of those side of the road, those silver things. They are there because of network. After school until late. It can't be good to 2025. So many years, guys, you can't fix network problem in Makaya. Guys, you are seriously neglecting about South Africa and So I need you guys to help us in that situation. Let's take charge and care for our people. Rain came in very expensive, and they've forever been expensive. They say they have CSI projects. Where? Are you doing these things, guys, just to pass the buck? Who can have access to you guys, and where and how? Che kunama choir wamaZion. Those choirs, per choir has a minimum of 40 young children, young boys and girls. And every Saturday, I can tell you, clap and tap, amaZion, every Saturday, they are somewhere in a hall singing. That thing helps to eliminate crime. These MNOs are not there to help them at all, Che. They're just sitting here making billions. And the Chair, I'm going to say this. Let it be we are called or corrupt or whatever, taking advantage. I don't care anymore. What we want is services to our people. Can you guys open doors for us? I'm bringing Lwabantwana Laba to you guys. Can I have appointment into your offices? Because they can't write proposals. They can't get access to you. They can't speak the language you want them to speak. And immediately they have a middleman in between. That person eats the money because he understands these processes. So I ask that you open your doors for those children. Crime is huge, guys. You should be playing a very huge role in eliminating crime in South Africa. So we ask that you do that. But I beg Vodacom, aniyeke le nonsense and bhataleni lo mfethu azokwazi asiphilisa. Asafuna ukuthi sixoxe into ukuthi ubuyele court wenzakalani. Iyekeni leyo nto leyo. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Shongwe. Thank you, all members, for your inputs. In fact, I think it was an important way to end, Honorable Shong. To say that at the end of the day, guys, this is about people, and I think this is how we started, you know. And I think as members, we honestly don't know what to say anymore. We speak to government. As a committee, we have instituted a quarterly session with the Department of Basic Education where we seek reports on school connectivity and everybody is just passing the buck. We sit with ICASA, what is happening on quality of service? People of South Africa think it's normal that you're going to say, no, there's no network. Ne? Like it's become common parlance how we speak. And no, Mtana, call me when you get to an area with network. And it's not right because your licenses specify the mandate quality of service. And maybe that's where I should start because you asked about the licenses coming up for renewal and the fact that you need certainty. And why it was so important for us to have this meeting now is that let's not surprise each other, guys, in 3 years. We'll still be here. So let's not, I hope. But let's not surprise each other in 3 years. Let's, as a country, as a sector, agree on certain fundamentals that by the time you get to license renewal process, we all know what needs to be done, or at least share a common understanding on what needs to be done. And I suppose one of the first things that I want to say is that I'm keen to hear from you what you think that those license conditions should look like. And secondly, given the fact that you are now coming to the end of these license conditions, how honestly you believe that you've done in that regard. We're busy here fighting with Minister Malatsi for 30% BEE to be retained in the sector. I'm keen to find out from all of you what your HDI ownership is, because one of the questions that have been put to us that we find very difficult to answer is the fact that some of you as MNOs are not even in full compliance of that 30% HDI ownership. So if you could be specific, please, in terms of what those numbers look like. Then secondly, I would like to know in terms of your value chain. So right from upstream all the way to retail, what steps are you taking practically to ensure that they reflect the demographics of South Africa? Would you say, for example, that over this period that you have been in operation, you have managed to develop female, Black network engineers who can run these networks? Would you say that you have managed to move from foreign owned technologies, that you're building sovereign technology with the muscle that you have, all these billions that are being talked about? Can you tell the committee to what extent are you really looking to contribute to those goals of the NDP, but also, as I'm saying, to ensure that you've really capacitated people who can run this network from a technical perspective? Connectivity coverage, that is not matching that Honorable Bodlani spoke about. My understanding of it, Honorable Bodlani, is the same issue that this committee has spoken about ad infinitum. This one builds, then this one builds, then this one builds, and all of them are building on top of each other. Then they then say we cover 90% of the country, all well and good. My first question is coverage versus connectivity. in your understanding, what is the difference? Because I think it was Telkom who told us they pass 21 million, 11 million houses. And I thought, what an unfortunate word, pass. Because that's exactly what's happening. They lay their lines, their fiber, and then they pass. Now, those schools, those hospitals, those what do they need to do, especially in terms of the social obligations, for them to have universal, meaningful connectivity? And what do you think your role is in that regard? Secondly, when it comes to school connectivity, what is your model? Because the members are right. We've been asking. So when you go into a school, you're given Zululwandle High School, Zululwazi High School that you must connect as part of your social obligations. We were told that you bring something like 10 megabits per second. Yeah. We would ask the schools, is there hardware? And the department says, no, the MNO says that they are not original equipment manufacturers, so they don't bring hardware. Maybe if you're lucky, they'll leave 10 tablets for a school, a whole school. So this connectivity, how do you understand it? And secondly, that which you deliver to these children, how does it differ when you're doing it under SA Connect and when you're doing it under the foundations, the many foundations that you have? Because we'll see very nice pictures of your foundations. You go to these schools, you paint, you do this, you do this. Then these other poor schools, because they are SA Connect schools, you think that they don't deserve, I don't know, perhaps the same level of attention. I got Honorable Tambo, those of us who have reached out to the people, he's still here. I got a inbox, which I actually want to share because I think it made the point that I wanted to make. This lady, her name is Kosi. She says she is a Makoti in the village of Egodini, Kwamhapati, Kusengqeleni. That's her message. There's only one network which is fully accessible for internet connectivity. It's Vodacom. No Telkom, no MTN, and certainly no Cell C. If you don't have a Vodacom SIM card, you have no connectivity. Needless to say, everyone has 2 to 3 SIM cards and 0 public Wi-Fi, etc., etc. Infrastructure sharing, guys, what is the problem? I've asked ICASA. ICASA says there's no problem. Because if she gets Vodacom there, it means that there's a tower. Why is Cell C, MTN, and everybody else not using that one tower? Because you then come to us and you speak about the fact that it's expensive. Personally, I'm really not impressed by all these 5 billion, 6 billions that you're rolling out every year, because you're just duplicating and building the same thing. Is there a reason why you are not sharing infrastructure? I don't know what the position of ICASA is around sharing spectrum. I heard that there's issues, discussions around radio access network. Would that not resolve our problem quite quicker, if I can put it like that? It's the same discussion we're having with Telkom and with Eskom and all those guys to say, why are you building these things and then hogging them? Why can we not share? And you know, it just leads me to think that it's about boys wanting to be seen who's got the bigger one. Why are we not able to just share these facilities? I am, honorable members, honestly, looking at time, so don't worry, I'm still within my 10 minutes. I promise you. I promise you. This issue of data prices. There's been discussions that have been happening in the industry around market consolidation, where I think you are making the point that you believe that there's not enough space, and many of you are looking to merge and come into some sort of arrangements. What would be your view if government, say, was to appreciate the idea of market consolidation in exchange for the regulation of prices? Because I don't understand how Telkom moves from 99 Rand, I think it was Telkom or Cell C, to 79 Rand after the market inquiry. You tell us about, no, when they released Spectrum, our prices went down. Yeah, it just happened to be the same time of the market inquiry. But you were moving from 149, Vodacom and MTN. Telkom moved from 99. Now, if you can make a huge drop from 149 Rand to 89 Rand, everybody is going to ask how you did that, except for the fact that there was a lot of fat to cut. Please tell me that that is not the case. I won't speak on the issues of RICA. I won't speak on, there's many issues. I mean, there's a lot of issues that we wanted to raise, but perhaps some of them we can write to you. My final question is, would any of you have an objection to us seeking independent verification of these figures that you're giving here, especially with regards to auditing, some of the claims that are made, not because we don't believe them, but because South Africans don't believe them. People don't have jobs. People are struggling to get into business. And then they ask, who are these people? Who are these 221,000 people that have been supported over a year? So I'm keen to see how we could take such a process forward. Thank you once again, honourable members, for your engagement. Can I do same order or reverse order this time? Somebody said they wanted to be third. Same order. You may start. You may start. Who's starting? Mr. Molapisi, over to you.
Chair and members, thank you. I want to first start by really thanking the committee for a very sobering and I guess very robust engagement. Chair, I will theme the answers because there's some commonality in a number of questions that are being asked. But let me first start by saying that I'm a village boy of this country. I'm a son who was raised by Valet Molapisi, the domestic worker. I have a very clear conscience, committee members and the chair, and solid level of appreciation for the plight of our people. Whatever we're going to say here and that we're going to answer is going to come from a very sincere perspective. We have no interest and any benefit in misleading the committee and saying the things that we are not capable of doing or we have not done. But I want to say that we hear you. We hear you. Your voices are very strong and your concerns are very valid. And truly, some of the things that you are mentioning, you are not wrong. So we want to acknowledge you. We want to acknowledge you for being such a very engaging and provocative committee. It is the work of this committee that will serve the South Africans very well. So we don't take this engagement in a wrong, with a wrong spirit. We accept the fact that we must account and we have a responsibility to South Africa. So we are happy and excited about the manner in which you are going by your duties. So let's start there. There's a concern around a couple of things, maybe let's say price. I think there's a very strong concern from the committee members, Chair. There's a concern around the pricing construct of our business, around the expiry of bundles. So we need to all lean into that and maybe to explain. And of course, there's a very passionate plea around coverage. And there's also a very strong concern around the service obligations. Those are what I'm taking largely as a theme. There are individual questions that I'll attend to, but I want to answer them in themes because there are some that are common across different committee members. We received spectrum in this country in 2022. MTN spent 5.2 billion rands on the spectrum cost. And Chair, I will say that we are practically about 10 years late in the allocation of spectrum in our country. That 10-year late was punishing to us in terms of cost, but in essence was also punishing to South Africans in terms of the access to broadband infrastructure. We are now hard at work as MNOs. We're implementing the 5G spectrum, 3500, 2600, 800. It will take us a little bit of time to finalize the implementation, but we're making progress. We have reduced our prices. We mentioned earlier on about 46% price reduction of the 1 gig bundle. And Chair, you are quite rightly asking, if you're sitting on 149, how come you're able to accommodate 149 to 99? I will, however, Chair, in a way, request the committee to also, as we do the analysis and look at the study of global MNOs. And I think what you will find when you do a proper analysis of global MNOs, you'll find that the return on invested capital across all MNOs in the world has declined. That the return on capital that we borrow has declined, and many of us are not able to meet the profitability to actually pay the loans that we get from the banks. So in science, in financial terms, we'll say our ROIC is close to WACC or below WACC. It is a global problem. That's why you see the markets in Europe are consolidating. India, which is the largest country, has got a huge number of people, can only take 2 or 3 MNOs. It simply cannot take any number with big numbers that they have. So the pricing construct, it is not, in our view, as exorbitant. If you check some of our bundles, I can check now, you get a bundle, hourly bundle, 3-day bundle. You get what you call my town offers, which are bespoke propositions that we give to people in different towns. You go on our private pricing platform, you're able to get much cheaper propositions based on the level of usage. Our pricing takes into consideration the level of wallet spend. So if you are my sister, Paulina, in the village, we know how much you are capable of spending because we can see the spending patterns. And then we customize a proposition for you because we can't compare you with Charles Muller PC who lives in Johannesburg. And for that, we sort of like design the pricing principles around if you are spending 20 rand on a monthly basis, maybe if you can spend 21, we'll give you twice the volume of data. We call it more for more principle. That we do largely for the vulnerable, the people who are largely in trouble in terms of spend. So we are very sensitive to that. I want to be very clear on that. Can we do more? I'm sure we can. But is there a lot of effort that we are making ourselves as MTN and the MNOs? I will say definitely. And I will ask that we look at that private pricing that we do for the poor. We are very careful in terms of how we price to make sure that the vulnerable get favorable bundles and more for more principle. The data expiry one, it just makes me think on, just to maybe highlight to the committee that the network is a finite resource. So the network does not exist in infinity, it's finite. So when you price for the network as a matter of principle, you need to price with the resource allocation in mind. So when I price and I create demand on my network, how much of the demand can I be able to sustain and can I be able to support? So for instance, if you were to say, I come to Parliament, there's a parking lot, there's a bay there, I pay for it. And then you say to Parliament, I'm going to be back here next year in March, and my parking bay must always be open for me because when I decide to use it one day at night, during the day, in the morning, on a Sunday, next week, next month, I must find my bay available. Here's what will happen to Parliament. To allocate that, they're going to have to create and build more parking bays because everybody who decides to come back later to access what they paid for will have to find that facility available. So when we do this, it is never to mislead. It is only because we say 7-day bundle, 3-day bundle, 1-hour bundle, we're giving it to you because we look at the resource on our network to say, for this volume of usage, we can afford to allocate the following resources because we don't have an overextended envelope in terms of capital expenditure. So it's really a construct that was never really meant to mislead. It is confusing, yes. Can the consumer sometimes find annoying? Correct. But when you apply the principle of resource allocation and you understand that Parliament cannot leave the parking base to one individual who will come back in the next 12 months and they must find available. If you buy a ticket to Mthatha, you can't say I'm going to use it again in December next year. And every time I want to get into a bus, I must find my ticket available. You can't, because what will happen is that the provider of that service must create as many buses as possible for that sporadic level of demand that has been created. So maybe to answer that question, sounds a little bit heavy maybe in terms of how we're explaining it, but in essence what we're trying to say is that it was never meant to mislead, but we can understand why customers might wrestle with the acceptance and understanding. But if the committee can also maybe, we can take you into our confidence and explain to you in level of detail, so it can help us to propagate this message that this was never intended to be a misleading proposition. But I will tell you that we do many propositions that our people should find affordable that are one-to-one pricing. That one-to-one pricing, we call it private pricing, bespoke private pricing, or CVM, customer value management propositions, which allows that we actually monitor your spend and give you according to the size of your wallet so that you don't penalize the poor. On coverage, let me deal with the 99% confusion. And Chair, I want to touch on the issue of sharing. Maybe let me start with that. I think you are absolutely correct. I think between MTN and Vodacom, and I stand to be corrected here, Mr. Mdlalosi, I stand to be corrected, but I think there's about 2,000 sites where we co-locate, where you find MTN network on their side and you find Vodacom network on our side. There is that. And that's why today we're even exploring even further to try and lower the cost. We're exploring what we call security sharing. Because if we're sitting on the same site, it makes no sense that a security agent must go and run to the site to go and check if the MTN equipment has been vandalized, and 7 minutes later, rush back with a different car, different personnel to go and check if the Vodacom equipment has been vandalized. We've engaged a Comcom on that, and I think we'll be closing that. We've given ourselves as the two CEOs the next 2-3 months to try and bring that consolidation of sharing. What that will do for us is that a site is sitting in the remote villages, the provider of security can go in once. That will help us to bring the cost down. I want to assure you that we are completely hard at work to try and find the ways to bring the service in a cheaper way to service the rural areas. Security sharing, that's one of them. So where we can, we're going to be able to do that. So any possible sharing under the current construct of the rules, we're going to do. That will help us to be able to do that. So we're innovating around that particular area. And then also, what we'll call for is also where we can co-build and figure out how ICASA can support us in terms of, the rules can support us in terms of co-build. But the point you are raising is absolutely correct. In the past, it used to be about who's got the number of sites. The network advantage used to be a key differentiator in the past. So if I say I've got 25,000 sites, someone's got 12,000 sites, it's about who's big and who's got a better presence. But that has changed because many of us share the network, we roam on each other's network. So the network advantage, in essence, I think parity has come through. And therefore, the issue of network differentiation in terms of footprint is no longer the primary matter. We have to consolidate our resources and share so that we can create universal coverage to address that point. So I've dealt with price, expiry, coverage. And there's a critical point here that you made, and which I found very compelling. I think you asked the question of coverage versus access. I thought it was very smart question, because I think it is very easy to come and say, look, we are 99% covered or 98%, 96% covered on LTE. But of course, if in that village there's only one person with a smartphone, that coverage in essence is actually meaningless. And there are a number of interventions we have to do to address that. So first of all, we have to look at the device access. The device access and also goes to the point about device manufacturing. The device access is a collective effort. It's not just the MNOs. There are many other retailers who distribute devices in this market who also need to create affordable means to be able to bring the devices. I mentioned earlier on about MTN, what MTN is doing around devices, the 99 Rand smartphone. And Honorable Kalisha, if I'm correct, I want to honestly correct you that the 99 Rand device for smartphone, I think you're confusing me with someone else. The 99 Rand smartphone for MTN, does not mean anything. Once you pay me 99 Rand, we take that 99 Rand, we put it aside for insurance. There's no obligation. There's no obligation for you to recharge. And if you don't recharge, we block. There is nothing like that, not on the MTN device. And I'm very happy to put that forward. It is the innovation of its own kind in this country and in the continent as we speak today, that we're the only MNO who's doing this at scale. And we're very proud about that because we understand what we need to do. So, Chair, I'm going to go back and maybe look at the individual questions just to make sure that I've dealt with all the questions one by one. Chair, you'll have to tell me how much time I have.
Yeah, I'm having to impose time on you as well, the CEO.
Okay. I'm going to try and answer if you got. There were quite a number of questions which were asked, and I think there was a question around our role within the Stage Digital Company. I think the question was asked by Honorable Vilakazi, and there's also a question about how do we see ourselves as MNOs and our role with government. Let me be very quick and clear to explain that we are definitely a partner of government. There was also a question around our role in terms of creating new industries. I will say this, Chair, you know how passionate I am in terms of software development in this country. I will say that the industries that you see today, the internet-based companies or software-based companies are built on the backbone of mobile operators globally and here. Every software company that you see that's got access to the internet and data and on devices, it is enabled through the creation of platforms and data access and APIs is built on the backbone of MNOs. We are a critical enabler in this market in terms of the creation of new businesses and new industries. There was a question around 2G and 3G sunset. We have taken as MTN a target of saying we need to decommission the 3G layer 2026, 2027. That is dependent on a number of variables. If our people can get to the MTN stores as quick enough and leave the old devices and take the new ones with 99 rand, we'll be very happy to decommission this layer as soon as possible. In some markets, in some provinces, we've started to do that already. So I think we're making very good progress around the 2G layer. We said as an MTN that we'll leave a sliver of 2G layer because the 2G will always be a consistent technology for M2M devices. So we're going to leave that. There was a question around does coverage cover everyone? I think I've dealt with that.
Sorry, CEO. I'll give you one more minute. Look at the most important one that you want to answer. Okay. And then the others will get them in writing because now I'm getting pressure.
Let me deal with the Chair. There's quite an extensive. We'll be very happy to respond to the questions. There was a question around RICA. Chair, I spent 7 years in MTN Nigeria. And I understand the history of SIM registration and its impact. Chair, I will make a statement that our country is unfortunately behind in terms of the legislation around SIM registration. We need to fix this very quickly. What I mean is that the way we've designed this framework, it is almost archaic compared to many markets where we serve today. We need biometrics. We need to be able to say when the customer registers, it takes your face and it does a lookup and a validation into a central database. We need you to help us to create that framework. If you can help us to create that framework, we can create a process that is unpenetratable. I can assure you that there is no room in our organization for lack of compliance and governance. But I think we also need the instrument of legislation to help us to do that. Many of our markets are doing this way exceptionally than what we're doing in this country today. And I can tell you that it's a function of us fixing the legislative framework. And that's what the association has done. We've come together proactively because we understand this problem and it actually affects us. We've come together and we've formulated what the rules should look like that can make this solution much more robust. And once we finish the packaging of that, we're going to hand it over to the DOJ and to ICASA to say, please take this and formulate a proper framework that all of us can comply with. When you do that, you will make sure that you don't do this and this one does that, and create some form of uniformity. If we can do that very quickly, we should be able to manage the challenge that you say that we see today. So I will leave it at the Chair there.
Yeah, I was about to redeploy you to Parliament. As a member of Parliament, you speak as much as these guys.
No, thank you,
Mr. Mdlalose?
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I think what I'll do is maybe just take a few matters that were directed specifically at Vodacom and maybe just add one or two points on the generic matters. I think firstly the matter with Mr. Makate and Please Call Me. I think it's important to say categorically that this is not about dragging it out. This is before the Constitutional Court, and we too await the outcome of that. We have in various ways tried to engage and come to a table. We simply have not agreed on quantums, and it's before the Constitutional Court. So I think just to leave that one there for the moment. I think the second one that was specific to Vodacom was on data pricing, and to the honourable member, the 5 gigabyte is available, and it is available on mobile. It's not a separate internet offer. It's actually there. In fact, as the session was going on, Honourable Chair, there were people on social media asking about it. Our team has responded to them, shown them exactly where they buy it. It's fully available. It's not hidden somewhere. It's actually there. And part of it, Chair, lies the problem around the price of data, of which some of it is around the perception of the price of data, which we will need to work on harder to ensure that that is more available. The fact that you are not aware that is available is part of the challenge for us to make you aware of that. And I think those are some of the elements. You're correct, Honourable Member, in terms of some of the different channels of what you can find maybe on a banking app, but you can't find it here and so on. Within our business, there's different ways to distribute our products, if you like, so to sell our bundles and so on. And each of those different channels, if you like, have different commercials that you need to pay. So what you can maybe sell on this channel will cost you a little bit more there. And so there might be different prices on different channels, but ultimately the 5 gigabytes is available for customers. It's available on all of our channels that we distribute directly. So just to put that one categorically and make that clear on that. I think the data expiry one is also, Honourable Chair and members, what you've raised passionately. And maybe I can join my fellow CEO and give a separate example to try and explain the matter, which has been spoken about at length. The data pricing that we price for is based on how we dimension the network. So we say this is what we need to input into the network to create the network to be able to carry the data, and therefore we charge on the basis of that. If one was looking at the price of making something fully available all of the time, it is obviously more expensive than dimensioning it differently at different times. And so to buy a data bundle is not like buying a loaf of bread. Buying a data bundle is buying access to something, almost like buying a Gautrain ticket. You can buy a Gautrain ticket for a week, for 2 days, for a return for a month, and it's the access that it's giving you to that service. To just reiterate and maybe use it in this example, if you were creating an endless accessibility to something, it would almost be saying that you want to build a 5-lane highway right across the country, because it must always be able to take 5 cars at the same time. And you would build that road network, if I'm just using roads as an example, you would build a 5-lane highway all across the network through every road. The end result of that, Honourable Chair, is it will actually push data costs up. So the very fact of bringing the validities down is an ability that we have and a tool that we have used to make the entry points more affordable for people who want to use them at a more affordable entry point. And therefore we dimension the network accordingly that way. That's part of the journey. The longer validities are available on the network. But you'll see that the shorter validities, and another honourable member spoke about prepaid, actually those bundles are cheaper because there are pro-poor bundles, because they are within the poorest towns that we have, the top 2,000 towns and so on. So those two things are linked, and that's how one should look at and think about these things. But again, happy to send a more detailed response to the committee. There was a question specifically to Vodacom on foreign ownership. Vodacom Group is indeed owned by 65% by Vodafone Group. This gives us a few things, Honourable Member. The first thing that it gives us is it gives us an ability to be part of a world-class company. What we have access to technologies, ideas from right across the group, from how things are being done in Spain to UK to Italy to Germany. There's nothing you'll find, Honourable Member, that we are as a group that the Germans can say they're doing that we haven't brought to South Africa. So we have the power of bringing world class into our business by being part of a bigger group. On top of that, we also have the ability to procure equipment and use the buying power of the group to ensure that we're procuring the things that we procure with the power of being part of a global group which has bigger procurement. But that being said, there are very strong local shareholders within Vodacom Group. So the PIC holds 12% of the share of Vodacom Group, and Yebo Yetu, which is our BE vehicle, equally holds 5%. So there's, along with all the other individual shareholders who trade in Vodacom shares individually. The point on infrastructure sharing, Chair, I won't belabor it, but again, just to give perhaps a different angle, the MTN CEO is correct. We do share on a lot of the sites, right across both of our sites, 2,000 roughly, as he said, of both of our sites. We share fiber. The question, Chair, is what is the step change? What is the difference that we can continue to make to continue to become more effective and efficient? And part of that is deepening that sharing. And deepening that sharing means not just sharing, for example, the mast, the actual physical tower. The question needs to be around, can we share the active part of our equipment? So the actual radio network, can we share in different ways? Can we not only share what we've built, but plan where to build, and so on and so on. And all of that needs to happen within the legislative framework that is available to us. And that's where we would need collective and collaborative support from yourselves and from all the legislators on being able to do that. There was a question specifically for Vodacom around selling of people's data. I want to make that very, very clear. We comply to all POPI regulations, and we do not do anything outside of that at all. So I just want to say that is not, factually speaking, not correct at all. We comply in every aspect of that. So just to be clear on that one. On RICA, this is a big challenge for many of our customers. Many people's data is stolen in terms of their phones are hacked and so on. And the key element on RICA will be that switch. We've been working as an industry collaborative with the Department of Justice, but it is to make that legislative switch to enable and enforce biometric registration. A registration that links that when someone registers for a SIM card, that registration needs to link back to the Home Affairs database, to the harness database, and give and be a point that can verify that. And unless that happens, it doesn't continue. So really bring in the biometric element, but also start to limit, for example, legislation that limits the number of SIM cards that one person can own. And those are the kind of legislative measures we need to be able to collectively deal with the issue and improve the RICA framework and registration legislation.
1 minute, CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Another specific one on Vodacom, in fact, it was for all, was about exiting contracts. Important to say that when contracts are entered into, particularly most of those involve a device. That's part of that contract. And what has happened with that device is, as an MNO, we've gone and we've procured the device from the OEM. We have put money into that device to reduce the cost of it. So we've invested in it on the basis that a customer will be with us for 24 months or 36 months. If that customer is going to leave early, then we would need to recoup the price or the cost of the device. And so that's some of the complexities that sometimes come up with regards to the different areas. Honorable Chair, I think I will leave it at that, and maybe all the others we will bring through in writing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members of the committee. Likewise, like my colleagues as well, we really acknowledge the concerns, and we're really here to actually find solutions across all of these. So I think, Chair, I'll touch mostly on the ones that are directed at Telkom, but also some that are a little bit industry specific. So I think the question of infrastructure sharing, I think you're really spot on that one. we, as MNOs, we're actually not really competing at an infrastructure level anymore. I think infrastructure sharing should be encouraged. We do, however, have been engaging ICASA and also the Competition Commission on some of the issues that could potentially be seen as collusion. And I think we are being listened to, and possibly you guys could also help us to expedite those processes to make sure that at least the rules around the game of infrastructure sharing are actually quite clear to everyone, and we don't find ourselves in a spot of bother with regards to the Competition Commission. So I really encourage that. On the question of data expiry, I think my other two colleagues have really vented on this one, trying to sort of explain the impact on the network itself in terms of how you create capacity and how that would actually impact and push on the input costs of actually creating even a gig of data. The other view is actually for every airtime that hasn't been utilized by the customer, because you've sold a service and you haven't delivered on that service, you actually have to put a contingent liability on your balance sheet. And as you carry this liability every year and it grows, it might grow to a point where your liabilities are much higher than your assets, and therefore you are technically insolvent. When you do go to a bank to raise money to actually invest back on actually improving the same network, the rate within which the banks will give you would actually be based on the fact that you are insolvent, almost like a default customer. So the cost of credit shoots up. When the cost of credit shoots up, it becomes an input cost to a gig of data. Therefore, we can't maintain the low prices. So there's a lot of complications. However, what we've done, especially on our side, is to actually, maybe to Sito's point, is to create specific propositions for customers where particularly you can buy a gig of data or even megabytes of minutes and utilize it within the specific space of time, so that we are not forcing you to buy a gig of data that you won't be able to finish within a day. So you can get daily, we've got what we call daily bundles, we actually have WhatsApp bundles, and all of these bundles are actually tailor-made for customers to ensure that whatever you've bought, you can actually utilize it as well. So there's many things that we're trying to do as MNOs to make sure that at least we can meet customers halfway with regards to this one. When it comes to data prices, I think it's been shared by my colleagues as well, but what I wanted to actually emphasize on is actually the input cost of running a mobile tower. So there's the rental, there's the batteries you have to buy, there's the diesel costs, and all of those actually contribute to a price that you can actually pass on to the customer. In most cases, most of these input costs, we actually absorb them as companies and try and actually take them on the chin before we can actually pass on to customers, so that we can keep certain prices for certain types of customers at a much lower rate. And we actually go as far as we create what we call, Motown deals that are specific to certain towns and certain areas. And obviously, when you go to the internet and Google these prices, you're not going to find them, because they are below the line. It's only when you are a customer and you subscribe to some of our platforms, and most prepaid customers actually know these platforms. Ours is called Monice, and they actually know the type of bundles that they get below the line. There was a question of airtime advance and some of the services that we provide as MNOs, such as streaming or content. They are value-added services to our core. It is not a core of what we're actually selling. Specifically at airtime advance, we're not in the banking space at all. We actually partner with people that already have banking licenses that actually understand how credit works. We do not charge interest on airtime credit. There is a minimal service fee, which is really minimal as opposed to when you're actually taking out a loan. And that is just to cover the cost of the actual platform itself. They do actually help customers to buy a lot more airtime on credit. It's actually a product that is enjoyed a lot by prepaid customers. They don't feel like we're actually exploiting them, because it is actually quite cheap. And it's actually, in certain instances, called an emergency top-up solution, because it's really when you have an emergency and you can't afford to buy airtime, and to actually give you this product. There was issue of coverage versus service obligations, and I think my two colleagues have covered that. But what I wanted to say was, especially with regards to how we roll out these, what do you call it, PSIs, right? Public service institutions. We don't view them as just, PSIs where we drop a router and actually leave. In most instances, that's why when we engage with school principals, we look at their connectivity requirements for the entire school. What has tended to happen is that it's been a miscommunication between the different departments as to what are MNOs supposed to do when they rock up at a school. And we're trying to clear those to say we don't just want to drop a router, because a router at the principal's office is not really going to help anyone. We actually would like to make sure that the entire school is connected. In certain instances where we have mobile towers in some schools and we actually have backup power in the form of solar, we actually do share it with schools, because in some instances you realize the schools is not even electrified. In most instances, sometimes we actually help them with gas stoves and actually gas itself, so that they can actually cook food for the kids. So we actually look at total solutions. Where you find us, where we've just dropped a router as an example, which is not something we're not proud of, it's because we're not finding each other with the school principals. It's actually not really, playing ball or not even allowing us. We haven't dropped a router and left it there, but we've just dropped it so that we don't incur the cost of reverse logistics, so that we continuously engage with the school. I'm going to come to the past one, right? I'm going to come to the past one so that I can also allay your own fear. So we actually drop it, engage, and then go back when we found each other with the school to actually connect the entire school. When we talk about homes passed, it actually means we've built the highway. You actually don't have houses as yet. That's how the network is actually built. The intention is to actually connect everyone there. And not most people usually want to connect to fiber, because customers have got different needs. In some instances, they just want a fixed wireless router, and that's what they use in that particular home. And in some instances, they actually use their own phones to connect everyone in the house. So it's basically dependent on each household if they actually want us to actually pull a fiber line into a house is actually much cheaper for us. To pass homes is much more expensive because we have to pull it from far away. So our intention is to actually connect everyone, and it depends on each own in each home if they actually want to be connected. In some instances, we've dropped what we call an ONT and said, here's a free service that you can use, and if you do like it, after 3 months, you can engage with us if you want to sign up as a customer. And we've actually created prepaid fiber products so that you can buy fiber almost like a prepaid customer on mobility as well, so that we can make it cheaper for people. The difficulty is if you don't create the infrastructure and you actually pass that down without doing that, to go back becomes much more expensive. That's why we sort of laid out Chair and the members of the committee. There was an issue that was raised on OTTs in terms of, can we really limit access to these OTTs and what they allow our people to do? The answer is it's a difficult one. We don't own the actual application itself, so we can't regulate the content or even block it. And in certain instances, if you do that, you actually have to block the entire country to have access to the internet, in essence, because broadband services are actually provided as such. However, we've been engaging with with the department as well, as to, can we expedite the regulations around OTTs? So, for instance, in Dubai, you can't make a WhatsApp call because it is regulated and blocked that you can't do that to protect the MNOs in that country. You can use WhatsApp on data. So these things, we've seen them elsewhere that they can potentially be done. And on RICA issues, I don't want to touch on that. I think my colleagues have touched on it. I think biometrics is possibly the future. Some difficulties that you have if people are living in informal structures. You don't have a proper address, and you actually have to capture something around that individual. In some instances, people don't have proper documents, like such as IDs, but they do want the service. You got to capture something. So how we've been engaging with the Department of Justice is to actually find solutions around those issues themselves. The balance between AI and people, I think in most instances, AI is actually enabling people, but we do spend a lot of money and investment in actually upskilling people so that they can participate in this world that is becoming much more AI enabled, so that they have the skills to actually do that rather than be caught up on old skills that are not necessarily needed by industry. And lastly, Chair, there was I think you started with it, are we government owned or are we privately owned? We are proud to be owned by government. 40% of our company is owned by government, another 9% by the PIC. And by the way, the PIC that manages the public sector pension funds owns almost every company in South Africa, including companies listed on the JSE. We are also listed on the JSE, which enables us to actually raise capital that would not necessarily be able to raise if we're not allowed to, would actually possibly be coming back to government to actually ask for money to invest back. So it has actually allowed us to be flexible. That's why we were able to do the things that we're doing. And we're also very grateful that we've been able to do that. And lastly, we are exempt from PFMA, so we actually have a little bit of agility in terms of how we procure the services, because we do compete with the guys that are largely privately owned, and they play by different rules, and you have to play by those rules to be able to survive. And I hope that actually answers the question. So at this point, Chair, I will rest, and I think we'll sort of maybe do maybe a physical submission if there's anything that I've missed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Madam CFO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am quite aware that time is of the essence. I think the biggest question for Salsi was more in and around our growth. So let me try and touch on that. We believe that our model best suits where we are as an industry. Where you have an industry where there's multiple players, you get to the point where there will be infrastructure people and there will be people that then provide the service. We've already moved away from having our own network, so the physical base stations, and we think that has worked out best, not only for us, but for the consumer. Because now we can deliver a better service, and that service we're still improving. So from that aspect, we think our business model is the right one. We definitely are looking to partner more. We're partnering with our roaming partners, and we're also looking to partner more to expand even other businesses, and as in the MVNOs that we partner with already. And we think the MVNO models are important to the industry at large, because they do add a different layer of competition to the services we provide. So you can never be complacent as a telco, because now we're all, the playing field is way open. And we believe enabling this competition is quite important. As the smallest profit-wise from the MNO providers in the room, we heard, we acknowledged, and we received the blessings that we heard about making billions and billions and billions of profits. Thank you very much. I will take that away as CFO. I am very happy for those blessings. But we do believe that obviously then the reinvestment of that is quite important. From our end, we have been limited, but even in the initiatives that we've partaken in currently, we do make sure that we try and implement deeply. And that's why for certain instances, you would have seen that our presence over the last couple of years hasn't been as strong. And you're only seeing us coming back from a presence perspective in the last probably 2 years, with a lot of work that we've done on the brand in the last 18 months. So we are still in the process of going back into our communities and being more visible and more present in those communities as we continue on our journey to turn around the core Cell C business. On most of the other topics, I think the CEOs have definitely covered. There's elements that we will cover in writing and come back to the committee on those.
Thank you very much. Over to you, sir. Elfie, I just want you to be aware that you will come after Act if you have any comments you'd like to add. Yes.
Thank you very much. I would like to start off by just answering the question whether we are partners or whether we see government as a social obligation. I think all the MNOs stand here firmly resolute that we are actually partners with government, but this partnership is a two-way thing. And the reason I'm saying that specifically is with regards to these public service institutions. So we've been given a mandate to connect them, and everybody that's sitting here understands that what is currently the requirement is not sufficient, to be honest. The requirement says provide connectivity. And then when you get to the school, there is nothing to provide connectivity to, right? So we've been trying to figure out what is it that we need to be doing with the Department of Education or the Department of Health to actually provide a meaningful solution instead of just providing a connectivity solution. Previously, in our previous obligations, we were working with Centec, who, when we get to a school and we provide connectivity, there would be a LAN set up, there would be a lab where there was actual equipment that the people could use. And now where we're standing is that we can't even get to get off the starting block with the Department of Education and other departments as to, it must be more than just providing a router. We understand that very well. When we do provide these services, from our perspective, these services are not charged for. It's a public service institution. We do not charge for these services. We maintain and we also monitor these services to make sure if anything happens, we come back to the beneficiaries to get them up and running. I just want to touch on the infrastructure sharing. I mean, everybody understands that this is actually the way, this is the future. It's going to reduce the cost. It means that we've got an opportunity to change our input costs. The one thing that we're sort of not addressing is the infrastructure providers themselves. They are not regulated. So they make our lives a bit difficult when we want to start sharing and they start imposing additional taxes on our sharing regime. So you've got ICASA that's saying sharing is a good thing, everybody must go towards sharing. And then when we start to do that, there's additional costs that we do not plan for. It makes it difficult for operators to manage their input costs when you know that somewhere, somehow, somebody's going to hit you with a 10%, 20%, 30% tax because we are sharing with somebody else. With regards to AI, I think at RAIN, we are quite bullish on AI. We don't see AI as a replacement of people. We see AI as a multiplier. We are using it to be as efficient as possible. We want our people to be the ones that assist AI in making our services better. We do not intend for AI to start replacing people. We want AI to be assisted by our people to make us more efficient. With the two points raised directly at RAIN, the issue of the network and the quality of service, yes, definitely this is a headache for us. Every single day we're trying to get better. We understand our limitations, and every single day we are trying to get better. With the issue of price, Honorable Shongwe says RAIN is expensive, has always been expensive. We believe that we are providing the best value in the market. And the reason for that is if you look at our products are geared towards providing home connectivity, not an individual user having a gig or 2 gigs or whatever. So when that person leaves the house, they take their internet with them. We are anchored at home by providing unlimited home service, and then we are providing the residents of the house two mobile services free of charge as part of our product construct. So in terms of value, we definitely believe we provide the best value in the country. In terms of whether it's expensive, I think we need to be looking at what exactly is the value that we are providing if we want to compare it to somebody else. Are they providing similar value if you compare the services that we are providing? Yeah, I think I will just leave it there.
You didn't answer about the cloud, or is it encapsulated?
The
It says
cloud?
when there's clouds, there's no rain.
Oh, that's the quality of service.
Okay, so you, no, I'm joking. I know you answered that one.